I thought it would be useful to record a short video of the talk that I gave at yesterday's roundtable event. I hope this is useful for discussion points, and I welcome all comments, corrections, concerns, additional information. Please feel free to send that to me. I'm very keen to expand the learning. So this was the event. I was asked to talk about these 6 things. Background to my whistleblowing, about why nurses don't stand together when they see something or witness the witch hunts, about prejudice and blacklisting, about the impact of blacklisting on COVID recruitment, the use of confidentiality agreements, and my views on the OWB, which is the Office of the Whistleblower proposal. So these are my personal views. Background to my whistleblowing. I'm a mental health nurse prescriber, and I've had an unusual career, including working as an NHS senior manager in management consultancy. And I returned to the NHS because I wanted to return to practice in community mental health in 2002. I've worked on several projects since then that have received national recognition, and I've presented some of my work at a NICE annual conference in 2018. Several examples of my work can be found on the NICE shared learning resource. My whistleblowing story is in the public domain, so I won't go into it in great detail here. To summarise, I'm not an expert on whistleblowing. It is just something I experienced and something I wasn't expecting. I initially raised concerns about service changes to the mental health assertive outreach team I worked in, and I was disciplined for informing GPs. This is in 2006. A few weeks later, when 2 patients echoed my concerns by writing to the trust, I was suspended. I was off work for about 10 weeks, not able to contact the staff or the patients that I was working with. The suspension was eventually ended and the disciplinary action ended, but at this point I was so disillusioned with the NHS and I left. I've been very fortunate. I was very fortunate at that time that I had alternative options, and I was able to take the financial hit of leaving my job. I went on to work on commissioned projects for the same trust and CCG until 2012, when things around me caused me to raise further concerns. At this point, I became concerned about bullying and poor management practices in the trust, and eventually I had to escalate my concerns. I did this through a protected disclosure. The CQC were involved and asked the trust to commission an external investigation of my concerns. I was interviewed for the external investigation, but since then I've never seen the report and I've been subject to blacklisting by the NHS. I was only able to confirm that the report made recommendations through digging deep and asking people and trying to find out information, which was difficult. I have asked the CQC for a copy of the report and they told me they'd lost it. In response to a Freedom of Information request, the CQC also said that my concerns were all third-hand, which is incorrect. I subsequently tried to engage with the NHS on the issues around whistleblowing because for me, I was just trying to do my job properly. And this is something that was echoed in what a lot of people said in the meeting yesterday. I funded 2 turn up the volume conferences, the aim of which was to bring people together from all areas and talk about the difficulties and successes and share the learning. I was not successful in engaging the NHS in this process, although the events did bring together quite a few people who hadn't previously met before and were able to link up. Why don't nurses stand together when they see something or witness the witch hunts? Difficult question for me to answer. In my opinion, there's 3 reasons, 3 key reasons. First of all, you're likely to lose your job and your career and be ostracized. And if you work in a remote or rural area, or if you work in an area where there's a large trust, covers a large geographical area, you're not going to be able to get another job without moving and relocating. So some feel it's better to stay and keep doing their best and just trying to change things from within. Many, of course, just walk away. Secondly, there's still nowhere to go to raise concerns safely. Nowhere. Campaigning for justice as well, if you've been victim of an injustice, often leads to burnout. Thirdly, There's a huge amount of money spent to promote approaches that don't deal with the underlying problems, and I would single out the Freedom to Speak Up Guardian initiative as being one of these. If you challenge this, again, you're on your own. On prejudice and blacklisting, I've discovered through meeting other whistleblowers that blacklisting of those who speak out is very common. It can take many forms, ranging from informal blacklisting, a quiet word to somebody maybe even raises their eyebrows when you're talked about in a meeting, to interventions that prevent career development, giving unsolicited and unfair bad references, or refusing to give a reference. For those employed by the NHS, the electronic staff record, the ESR, which is shared throughout the NHS, can be used as a way of sharing detrimental information on whistleblowers. This has caused people to be denied a fair chance to gain further employment. I believe that the full extent of the use of the ESR for this purpose is yet to come to light. In my case, the blacklisting takes the form of repeatedly being given the cold shoulder. For example, being excluded from meetings or invited to meetings, as happened to me, and given the list of the forthcoming meetings, and then later getting the email saying, no, you're not invited. Letters not replied to, emails not replied to, and being generally avoided. And also, I felt a responsibility, because I'm an open whistleblower, not to be too close or contact people within the services in case it reflected badly on them. Of course, all this that I'm saying about blacklisting is subjective, and maybe sometimes I'm wrong. Healthcare is a tough environment, I accept that. However, I have been subject to some clear examples of ongoing detriment. On one occasion, my company was enthusiastically awarded a small contract of work one day, and then the next day, the same person who gave us the contract rang and phoned me to cancel the work, saying it wasn't what they wanted. What had happened in the interim, I didn't want to dedicate lots of time and effort into trying to find out, but it was very strange. Also, last year, I found out that staff from the trust I work with are still told not to speak to me, even in one case where they were wanting to ask me a question, a clinical question about a project, a successful project that I'd worked on. In addition, I was deeply upset when an NHS trust who commissioned one of my projects failed to acknowledge its success. So when you're blacklisted, it doesn't matter whether you're saying something good or bad, you're out of the loop. This led to a poster being presented at a NICE conference in 2015 on a project that was highly commended by NICE. Prior to the conference, I contacted the trust to let them know of the success and the poster that was being prepared, and was completely ignored. So the poster as it appeared, which was produced by NICE, was a blank space in the left-hand corner where the trust logo should have gone. Bringing things up to date, I was asked to comment on the impact of blacklisting on COVID recruitment. Although I worked for the NHS from 2002 to 2006, and then I became self-employed, working back on contracts till 2012, before the blacklisting really kicked in and my work just tailed off, I decided, because of COVID, that I should do something, and I applied to the NHS in May as a returner. Since I applied, I've been interviewed 7 times by 4 different organisations, and they all repeated similar questions. Some of them didn't have the information from the previous interview. Most recently, I was interviewed 2 weeks ago. In each case, I was asked to say the area I've felt best suited to working in, and this is community or primary care with a focus on mental health, multimorbidity, clinical assessment, patient engagement, and service development, all things I've got a track record on. In each case, I was told that this is an area that they're looking for people in. A reference has been taken up, and my DBS check has been completed. On the 29th of June, I received a call from the local acute trust offering me bank nurse. I've no recent inpatient experience, especially in general nursing, so I think I would have been more of a hindrance than a help. And I was a bit surprised by this, because it wasn't an area I put myself forward for. I can only assume that the blacklisting I suffered from speaking out for patients is still in place, as evidenced by my experience of applying as an NHS returner. I'm always open to being corrected, but if I am right, this is an appalling reflection on the NHS culture, in my view. I wanted to say a little bit about confidentiality agreements, and this is not an area, like as with whistleblowing, I'm not an expert on this area. I'm just somebody who's experienced it and tried to contact and learn with a lot of other people who've experienced it. In 2006, when I was suspended, I was told by my union rep, and this is a relatively small thing that I was suspended for, and that I expected the process just to run its course and things to be over. But at that stage, I was told I could possibly go for a compromise agreement. Now, I'd never heard of this before. And I think I said at the time, so I could be paid to shut up and leave. I was horrified that this even happened. It was only later, when I met people like Dr. Kim Holtz with the Turn Up the Volume conferences, that I discovered how widespread the practice of compromise agreements, non-disclosure agreements, and paying people off was. In my view, this problem has not been dealt with fully, and the practice of suppressing patient safety concerns in this way may even be continuing. This, for me, is a key reason why we need a body such as the Office of the Whistleblower. On the Office of the Whistleblower, this is important, I believe, because I would like to see a route which people can use to act early on concerns and prevent patient safety issues becoming employment issues. By the time it becomes an employment issue, the patient harm may have happened or is about to happen. For me, to be confident that the Office of the Whistleblower was a good solution, was going to help, which I believe it will, I would like it to demonstrate measurable benefits from early intervention with everybody involved in solutions, not just a clique of NHS people who try to contain the problem within that area. I'd like to see, secondly, that it can work sustainably in the long term to produce evidence of what works and what doesn't when it comes to protecting staff who raise legitimate concerns. So some real learning, interdisciplinary learning across every sector, because this is not just a healthcare problem. And thirdly, I'd like to be confident in the Office of the Whistleblower. I'd like to see that the office can show it's truly independent, and it has the resources to identify and research the key issues and continue to demonstrate real learning. There is so much spent trying to justify the current approaches to speaking up in the NHS. If you challenge them, you have no resources and you have to research it and do the work on your own, which is just too time consuming, too difficult, and very isolating. At the moment, I believe when NHS or social care staff want to escalate patient safety concerns that their employer has failed to deal with, there's often nowhere safe to go. Nowhere. Thank you.